at the Super Bowl.
Haywood Hale Broun with the Green Bay Packers.
Haywood Hale Broun in many layers and Bloomington, Minnesota.
Welcome to Woodie's World. I knew him as Woody. I'm Bud Lamoureux. We were a television team exploring the America of the 1960s and 70s, looking for the big stories and the not-so-little ones. And every Saturday night on the CBS Network News, there was Woody Broun with his merry mustache, his loud jackets, and his suitcase full of words. Oh, what words.
As befits a bowl called Super, there was in Los Angeles Coliseum today enough pageantry and color for a coronation.
Super Bowl I in California. Woody takes us from the Packer defeat of Dallas for the NFL championship right through the big game that was the big yawn in Los Angeles, and returns to Southern California 6 years later when the street value of tickets exceeds $100. Parity is achieved between these old rivals, and LA football fans are no longer yawning into their tacos in this special Super Bowl edition of Woody's World. It was 1967, the year professional football finally came to its senses and crowned one champion. To the tempestuous Vince Lombardi, that meant one thing. His Green Bay Packers had one extra game to play to prove their superiority. Seeking warmer weather, Lombardi took his Packers to Tulsa, Oklahoma, of all places, to get ready for the NFL championship game against Dallas. Woody's World went along to watch the Pack get wrapped.
In search of ideal practice weather, Vinny Lombardi brought his Packers to Tulsa to find this, and a sheaf of telegrams inviting him on to other towns. No weather can make football an easy game, however, and in sunshine or rain, mud or snow, trainers must, with adhesive tape and ingenuity, find ways to armor players against the shocks of blocking and tackling. Professional football is a game better suited to lobsters and beetles than to soft-shelled humans. And the half-mile of tape which trainer Bud Jorgensen puts on Packer wrists and ankles before every game or practice is a thin shield against the full weight of a 250-pound lineman maddened by the scent of playoff money. The Packers are a grim and grinding bunch, however, ready to run even when the ankle is swelling out of its adhesive sheath. They're aware that every ounce of protective gear costs them a precious fraction of speed, and some of them secretly remove pieces of the padding from that modified shell, the shoulder guard, or, ready to risk a kidney, leave a protective belt in the locker. Such devices, used and unused, add up to nearly 2 tons of football equipment in 10 trunks and 43 individual duffel bags which accompany the Packers on their travels. Among the refinements are 3 types of shoe and a variety of cleats designed to suit every kind of footing and assure that no one falls down without being knocked down. Coach Lombardi is called the toughest man in a tough profession, but he is realistic enough to know that inspiration can't make a cripple run forever, and that a crash on ice may be more damaging than a hard tackle, hard as tackles are in pro football. Normal weather in Tulsa would have made this turf a pleasure to fall on, but the Packers became champions through that organized paranoia which assumes that everything, including the weather, will be unexpectedly difficult and hostile. Ice in the Southwest is, like broken bones and bad bounces, one of the things the Packers expect and are expected to overcome. When Packer meets Packer in drills, even the iron leader believes that something soft like an air pad ought to come between them, lest player after player be led down to that one of the 10 trunks of equipment which recognizes that a football player sometimes finds a piece of tape and a pat on the back not enough to keep him in one piece. The more sensible medieval athlete went out to play encased in steel, but then it's doubtful that even Sir Galahad, so caparisoned, could outrun the cornerbacks to catch a pass. This is Haywood Hale Broun with the Green Bay Packers.
It wasn't reported anywhere, but Woodie's World had seen Vince Lombardi in full fury that week in Tulsa, as Woody later recalled.
Vinny could go from here up to blind rage in 10 seconds and then back down. There was nothing in between. And once when we were doing a piece about the dressing room and the lights went out, he screamed at us to get out. And he realized that our electrician with his power pack light was providing the only light in the dressing room. And he suddenly smiled and invited us to drinks.
Lombardi's Packers get to an anticlimactic Super Bowl I when this special Super Bowl edition of Woody's World returns. Vince Lombardi's predisposition with the NFL championship game rather than the Super Bowl was right on. The Packers barely had enough to outlast the Cowboys by a touchdown. Lombardi's next task was a lot easier against the Kansas City Chiefs. The city of Los Angeles was not exactly drooling over the prospect of what would be the first Super Bowl. Tickets went for $10. How many would you like, sir? It was a press agent's nightmare, as our man Woody found out.
On the eve of the game, Los Angeles Coliseum is empty, and it looks as if there may be some bald patches here tomorrow. National curiosity about the Super Bowl may be high, but a team from Wisconsin meeting one from Missouri is not inflaming Los Angeles. The folding chairs and picnic arrangements which mark ticket lines at most major sports events are absent here. You could hardly get started on a donut before being asked, "How many, please?" The game is almost as secret as the rival game plans. Bus cards proclaim the racetrack rather than the Super Bowl, and a sign outside a tap room nostalgically recalls the football team that Angelinos get excited about. Outside Super Bowl headquarters, which one desk clerk denied was Super Bowl headquarters, the only billing goes to the hotel's bar. The stakes may be high, but the publicity is distinctly low in key. Commissioner Rozelle explains the local apathy as a backlash of resentment against the TV blackout, which runs in a 75-mile radius around the Coliseum. The trophy, which dwarfs the commissioner, is topped by a silver football. Each team will use its league's distinctive ball on offense tomorrow, but whether the one on the trophy is NFL or AFL, no one knows. The training camp towns were more hospitable. Long Beach, south of Los Angeles, welcomed the Chiefs with a banner, and the AFL champions had a few lighthearted moments of volleyball before Coach Hank Stram recalled them to stern reality and banned the press from his stadium. Coach Lombardi, who loves hideouts, brought his Packers to the mountain-circled town of Santa Barbara, north of L.A., where he also decreed that practice would be secret, although none of his fundamental type plays are. A glimpse of the limbering up reveals the Packers as fresh and fit. Quarterback Bart Starr is a major reason why they are favored. Ironies abound around the Super Bowl. The small-town team with many owners is actually favored over the upstart club with a millionaire boss. The shirt-sleeve weather is not home climate for either club, and the game of the century won't fill the ballpark.
Many, resentful of the TV blackout, will travel 75 miles to watch the game at motels like this one, where the Packers are staying. After all, at halftime in the Coliseum, there will be bands, 300 pigeons, and 10,000 balloons. But at halftime here, you can go swimming. This is Haywood Hale Broun awaiting the Super Bowl in Southern California.
The next day, Woody got rid of the bathing suit, put on one of those jackets of his, and showed up at the Coliseum in Los Angeles.
As befits a bowl called Super, there was in Los Angeles Coliseum today enough pageantry and color for a coronation. Sensing a lack of suspense, the super satraps poured on the production, and the air, empty of really vital passes, was at least alive with balloons and enough pigeons to fill San Marco Square in Venice.
There was a brief illusion of equality between the teams as Chief Coach Hank Stram raced on the field like a man sensing an upset, while the veteran Vince Lombardi of Green Bay slipped unnoticed down the sideline. 12 officials were garbed in what was described as a neutral uniform. Unlike the regular season rig of black with white stripes, it was white with black stripes and an unmarked cap. There was a historic moment, 7 years in the making, when the two leagues faced each other across a football instead of a press release. Each team was allowed to use the distinctive ball of its league, and a civilian sat on the nest and produced the proper eggs at the proper moment. Stram's strained face shows the first half closeness, and Lombardi's snarl reveals the Packers' savagery which broke the game apart later. A pair of sad sights for old Packer star Paul Hornung, who was on the program but not the field, and a small boy whose spirits drooped like his chief banner in a grandstand which in places was embarrassingly bare.
One reason for the fan languor was what you get for your money. $10 bought this rather detached view of the proceedings. It was a better place to get a little sun and talk about old L.A. Ram games. As the game progressed, some bolder spirits improved their locations by storming the fences. Absentees may have been saving their money. After all, there's the Pro Bowl, and an awfully good Argentine soccer team will be in town in a couple of weeks.
Still, as they say in the society pages, everybody was there, including a disguised and discouraged chief owner Lamar Hunt and Commissioner Pete Rozelle, comfortably close to the TV screen, which is pro football's cornucopia.
As the stadium emptied out, the general mood was more, I told you so, than what do you know. It had been too predictable to be memorable. This is Haywood Halebrun at the Super Bowl.
Final score, Green Bay 35, Kansas City 10. Next, the big game returns to the Los Angeles Coliseum 6 years after the original. Lots more hype and $100 tickets on this special Super Bowl edition of Woodie's World. So, we move forward 6 years. The leagues, or rather conferences, have achieved parity. They claim they don't hate each other anymore. And in keeping with the early Super Bowl tradition of playing in warm weather sites, the game moves back to Southern California for the first time since Super Bowl I. That's where we find Woody, snooping around the training sites of the Dolphins and the Redskins, trying to figure out what happened to those $10 tickets of the first Super Bowl.
Not long ago, scalpers packaged Super Bowl I tickets like the autumn leaves they resembled in volume and value. The ennui engendered by a meeting between the mighty NFL Packers and the upstart AFL champions from Kansas City washed bare great areas of Los Angeles Coliseum grandstand, and the remaining fans tended to rush together like friends and relatives on the last night of a theatrical disaster. Celebrities came not in battalions but as single spies. Now, at places like Murray's, a licensed broker in Los Angeles, the prosperately desperate were paying $125 for good locations and more for premium spots.
Murray's, may I help you? Okay, now we have them from $35 up. Yes, sir. As high as $125.
There was such a wheat pit air of rapid speculation that some who'd bought tickets were selling out, preferring profit to prestige. Even the players were trying to tackle the elusive extra admission.
We were allotted 25 tickets, and that doesn't even cover my immediate family in this area, so let alone all my friends.
I got a lot of my family coming down for the game this weekend, and I think about 50 of them, somewhere around there.
What was originally a vendetta has become an event. The spiteful virulence of the AFL-NFL feud has given way to sporting generalities and posters which seem prematurely to have placed the heroes in Valhalla. As an event, however, Super Bowl VII should fill this Coliseum to overflowing.
Much of L.A.'s fascination flickers around the Redskins and coach George Allen, who had great success with the Los Angeles Rams, before departing for Washington, surrounded by a flock of Rams to whom he's still a careful shepherd.
The most difficult task we have is not practice or to play the game, but to avoid the distractions. It's the World Series rolled up into one game.
If you win this one, will you feel that your coaching career has been capped? Will it be hard for you to get going again next year?
No, I don't think it will be. I'm the type of person that is usually raring to go every morning. And it's whether we're playing a game or whether it's the off season. I enjoy my job. In fact, I love my job.
The lovable Allen made his players briefly available and visible. They sat on benches like girls hoping for dance partners, while journalists struggled for at least constructive banality.
Do you think that for the Super Bowl much psychology really is needed, or just that you're there?
Oh, just to be here is enough for us. I know that. And seeing a team like Miami that's won 16 games in a row, it's going to be a great one for us. So looks like we're going to get stormed before the game.
This year, for the first time, the public was invited to attend Press Picture Day and took the invitation with a horrifying literalness, suggesting victory celebrations before the event and bringing on amplified adjuration.
Attention, please. Will everyone please clear the playing field?
Washington retired before the wave and took up underground positions. But wherever coaches and players went, the steady susurrus of soft interrogation continued. With 1,500-odd journalists doing the interrogating, the susurrus sometimes soared to a high hum. The Miami camp, headed by cautious coach Don Shula, seemed a bit concerned that lovable old Snoop Allen had spies on the grounds. Certainly a whole intelligence apparatus could have concealed itself behind the cameras of the professionally curious, who inspired the players to click off a few on their own, perhaps against the day when the den wall will be the only proof that Dad was an athlete. That memories are short is shown by the fact that few recall that only 6 years ago, these parvenus from the new league were, in their first meeting with the NFL, loved but not admired even in their own councils. 11-year American leaguer Nick Boniconti struck the Proustian note of wistfulness.
I never had more of a rooting interest in a game than that Super Bowl. I remember distinctly sitting in my living room watching that game and just, I don't think I've ever rooted as hard for a team as I did then. And it was kind of a novelty type of a game and no one really took it serious. But I think they're taking a stake right now that we're here for a serious game.
If further proof is needed of Super Bowl prosperity, it may lie in the fact that the press, as a reward for putting all those questions, was tendered a shipboard party this week. The Caesars, who gave their numerals to Super Bowl chronology, would have been proud. This is Haywood Hale Broun in Los Angeles.
Miami won that sunny Super Bowl 14-7. Coming up, the frostbitten fans of Minnesota would have loved hosting a Super Bowl when they played outdoors. The hardiness that was the Minnesota Viking fan in this special Super Bowl edition of Woodie's World. A cold weather Super Bowl has never been part of the equation, but Minnesota Viking fans of the pre-Metrodome era would have loved one, as would our Woody Broun.
In the hard-bitten world of pro football, warm weather clothing is like cosmetics to the Victorian, an unnecessary layer which weakens the character. To the Minnesota Vikings, who play here and who take their name from dwellers on the icy ocean, frostbite is a way of life.
Old-time fans are perhaps happier in Bloomington, Minnesota, where football has the rugged quality associated with the Yukon Gold Rush and the upper reaches of Mount Everest. The footing sometimes suggests a kind of handicapped hockey, and the fans stare wistfully at the bright blowtorches battling the frozen world.
Fresh off a Super Bowl appearance in 1970 in warm weather New Orleans, the Viking faithful showed off their defiance of the Minnesota chill when Woody showed up the following winter and checked out the parking lot at Metropolitan Stadium.
The wish that a wedding reception should be framed in material for delightful memory has decorated many a country club ballroom. For a pair of Minnesota Viking fans, as so often before, romance has defeated common sense.
That's ridiculous.
This time in the matter of the proper costume for an alfresco affair in an Alaska-type ambience. And the bouquet is gale-blown to an usher whose surprised fingers are as blue as the bride's eyes. To Norsemen, real or adopted, the gelid playground hard by the gridiron is a pleasure dome as icily seductive as Kubla Khan's Xanadu. And a sit-down banquet here makes the effete East's autumn tailgating look like rural soup kitchens. However quickly the lobster regains the temperature of his native waters, the champagne will stay appropriately cold till the last bubble has burst with a shiver in the Minnesota air, while the hardy revelers easily restrain themselves from a plunge into the comforting warmth of the barbecue pit.
Today at Metropolitan Stadium, the pit yawned invitingly indeed. It was somewhere between wedding weather and that icy ring of which Dante so feelingly spoke. It was, in fact, the kind of weather that Minnesotans find agreeable, the rest of us deplorable.
A warm first line of defense is an essential. One group shows King Cole heartiness outside a bus, which proclaims a Norse version of machismo, while another retreats to a camper where winter can only crouch sullenly on the roof. The white and distant sun gets help from small cousins in grates and cages which blaze and sputter helpfully. Viking purple is found on more than fans' noses, and the comestibles are guarded by that Viking leprechaun, the troll. Banners proclaim the availability of liquid mirage for those who need the illusion of warmth, while a friend will rescue those lost in the high passes of the parking lot. Officially, a fan should carry no more than a ticket and a blanket into the cold Coliseum. But to take a thermos from a Minnesota football fan is to ensure his fall before Jack Frost. Once settled in, the football devotee can study his breath pattern or try to hear comments filtered through layers of purple wool. Some fans tend slightly to overflow their allotted space, designed as it was for baseball fans in chinos, minis, and Hawaiian shirts. Unthinkable get-ups today.
You find the weather a little severe for watching football?
Just right. Perfect day.
Have you been to all the Minnesota home games?
Every one of them, yes. Never wear gloves either.
Well, I noticed that you're drinking coffee. Do you find it colder than he does?
Not a bit. I think the weather's beautiful.
In the struggle to stay warm, the football fan becomes a bulky unisex figure, rather like a walking bedroll, and hard for a friend or associate to recognize. This is Haywood Hale Broun in many layers and Bloomington, Minnesota.
Woody could only dream what a cold weather Super Bowl would have been like. We thought we'd leave you where we began, at the first big game in Los Angeles, where the Super Bowl and television found each other.
Commissioner Pete Rozelle, comfortably close to the TV screen, which is pro football's cornucopia.
As the stadium emptied out, the general mood was more, I told you so, than what do you know. It had been too predictable to be memorable. This is Haywood Hale Broun at the Super Bowl.